What's up, everyone? Tony from the Cold Case Project, back again. And today, what I want to run with you over is all content shared in these videos is readily available in any Google search. Now, with that said, I take this content, have it rewritten, and upon rewriting it, put it in these videos to spread the word on the thousands and thousands of cold cases of men and women throughout the United States that are just forgotten, and I give this platform to them so their cases and their stories can be told. Now, in addition to that, if you look down below in the description, you're going to see some brand new t-shirt and coffee cup designs I've actually gotten from a couple of my subscribers who have over the years have been giving me some awesome fan art. So with that said, I'm offering a 20% discount code down below if you check that out, and splitting proceeds with them because they are awesome. Been watching me for quite some time, and I definitely think they deserve to be rewarded for some of the work they do on top of being full-time employees also. So once again, if you have any recommendations or any suggestions, comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the video. Like, subscribe. I'm out. Peace.
It was a cold Friday morning in Cordell, Oklahoma, January 26, 2007. A small, quiet town where people knew each other's names, where routine was comforting, and where a mother like Melissa Flores had every reason to look forward to her day. At 8 a.m., Melissa made a phone call to her sister-in-law. Her message was simple. She was on her way to pick up her 3 children. The plan was to bring them back home. A normal, everyday thing for a devoted mother like Melissa. But Melissa never arrived. No one ever saw her again. Melissa Flores was the kind of mother who never let her children down. Her family describes her as nurturing, dependable, and strong, someone who would never disappear without a word. Her sudden vanishing sent immediate shockwaves through her loved ones. She had been staying at the home of her estranged boyfriend, Ronnie Dean Denny Jr., on South Glen Street that morning. That's the last place anyone can confirm she was seen. Later that day, her car was found still parked at the house. Inside were the kinds of things any woman stepping out for a quick errand would take with her: her purse, her makeup bag, and her cell phone. But Melissa was gone. In the months leading up to her disappearance, Melissa's relationship with Ronnie Denny had been rocky. In fact, just 6 months earlier, she had taken a serious legal step, requesting a protective order against him. In her petition, she said he had threatened her life. But only a week later, she asked for the order to be dismissed. No one can say exactly why she changed her mind, but many who knew her believed she was simply trying to keep the peace for herself and for the sake of her children. Denny was the father of Melissa's youngest child, and their connection was one that had clearly turned volatile. After Melissa vanished, Denny was arrested, but not for anything directly related to her case. He was charged with drug and weapons offenses and ultimately received a suspended sentence. Still, investigators had questions, and Denny had answers he refused to give. The case took a dramatic turn when a childhood friend of Denny's, a man named Jason Canterbury, came forward. What he said shocked investigators. According to Canterbury, Denny had confided in him, admitting that he had taken Melissa's life during a heated argument. Jason testified that Denny told him he felt instant regret, but the damage was done. There were more troubling details, too, about other individuals possibly being present and helping to cover up what had happened. According to the testimony, Melissa's life had ended that morning, and those responsible had done everything they could to hide it. Denny, for his part, denied it all. He called Canterbury's claims lies, said he never made such a confession, and described Jason as someone struggling with addiction and not to be believed. Melissa's family never stopped searching. They never gave up hope that someone, somewhere, would step forward with information. They organized searches, posted flyers, and waited anxiously every time there was news, only to be disappointed again and again. And through it all, one cruel fact remained. Melissa's body had never been found. Still, prosecutors pressed forward. With Canterbury's testimony and other supporting evidence, Ronnie Dean Denny Jr. was arrested in June of 2014 and charged with Melissa's murder. Authorities believed he had used a 9mm rifle, the same weapon mentioned in the alleged confession. In September 2015, after a trial that brought forward years of questions, heartache, and suspicion, Denny was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Even with a conviction, Melissa's story doesn't feel finished. Her body has never been recovered. Her family has never had the opportunity to lay her to rest. There's been no closure, only the lingering ache of not knowing where she is. Today, Melissa Flores remains classified as a missing person, even though the law has spoken about what happened to her. Her children have grown up without their mother. Her parents continue to speak her name, and the people of Cordell still remember the day she vanished. The case of Melissa Flores isn't just a criminal file. It's a story of loss, of love, and of justice that came late, but not too late to tell the world that her life mattered. And we're here to make sure she's never forgotten. The cold winds of December swept across the open plains of northeastern Oklahoma in 1999, rustling the tall grass and whispering secrets through the bare trees that lined the backroads near the tiny town of Welch. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where family legacies and small-town history ran deep, and where people waved at strangers as they passed on the narrow two-lane roads. But beneath that quiet exterior, something darker simmered in the Freeman family trailer, nestled in the rural outskirts of town. Ashley Freeman, 16 years old and vibrant with life, lived in that trailer with her parents, Danny and Kathy Freeman. They lived simply, off the grid in some ways, their trailer lacking running water and heated only by a wood-burning stove. Still, they had electricity and a landline phone, and to many who knew them, the Freemans were self-reliant, tough, and accustomed to the rural lifestyle. They hunted, they fished, and they knew how to survive. Ashley was a strong-willed girl, intelligent and independent. She worked part-time at Roscoe's, a local convenience store in Welch, saving diligently for a car of her own, something that caused tension with her father, Danny. While Ashley had her heart set on one vehicle, Danny insisted on another. It was one of many conflicts in a family that had weathered more than its share of turmoil. Not long before the nightmare unfolded, the Freemans had suffered a devastating loss, one that would cast a long and sinister shadow over everything that followed. In early January 1999, tragedy struck when Ashley's older brother, Shane Freeman, was shot and killed by a law enforcement officer on a quiet country road just outside town. He was only 17. According to official reports, Shane had been spotted driving a stolen car that broke down on the side of the road. When Officer David Hayes approached, Shane allegedly reached behind his back and pulled a gun. Hayes fired in self-defense. Shane died at the scene, but Danny Freeman didn't believe it was self-defense. He was convinced the police had murdered his son. In the months that followed, Danny lashed out against the local sheriff's department, calling them corrupt and dangerous. He openly accused them of a cover-up and claimed Shane had been targeted because of long-standing resentment. His anger wasn't entirely without context. The Freeman family had been on uneasy terms with law enforcement for years. Danny had a reputation in town. He was known to have a violent temper. Several relatives claimed he was prone to outbursts, and there were past incidents that raised concern. In 1985, Danny was arrested for assaulting his own father-in-law after a dispute over bushes being trimmed without his permission. Kathy's parents would later say that Danny's anger often spilled over onto his wife and children. And then there was the marijuana. According to several people close to the family, Danny grew marijuana near the trailer, not necessarily to sell, just for his own use. Still, it was a risky move in a town where the sheriff's department kept close tabs on everyone. And in a place like Welch, when you pushed too hard against authority, you became a target. Danny had been charged with child abuse in August 1998 after Shane showed up at school with bruises and bleeding on his backside. A counselor reported the injuries, and Danny was accused of using excessive force to discipline his son. During a pretrial hearing, Shane told the court that he was no longer afraid of his father, and some family members said Shane's behavior, including stealing his uncle's truck and later burglarizing a friend's house, was a desperate attempt to gain his father's approval. Danny was eventually acquitted of the abuse charges after a jury deadlocked, and the judge refused their request to sentence him to counseling instead. Still, by the end of 1999, the family's relationship with law enforcement had soured beyond repair. Danny was furious over Shane's death, and he made it known. He was even considering filing a civil lawsuit against the sheriff's department. That made some people nervous, including those who wore badges. The air was cold and crisp on December 30th, 1999, and inside the Freeman trailer, things seemed surprisingly normal, even joyful. It was Ashley's 16th birthday, and her best friend Lauria Bible had come over for a sleepover, like they'd done so many times before. Lauria's parents, Jay and Lorene Bible, were close friends of the Freemans. Despite the past trouble between Shane and Lauria, Shane had once broken into the Bible's home and stolen some items. The families had mended fences. The girls remained inseparable. Earlier that evening, Kathy took Ashley and Lauria into Veneta, a larger nearby town, to eat. Lorene Bible said they went to Pizza Hut, but police would later believe they visited Big Bill's barbecue instead. Either way, after dinner, they stopped to pick up livestock feed and visited Kathy's mother's house to collect fresh water, a necessity since the Freemans didn't have plumbing. Ashley's boyfriend, Jeremy Hurst, met them at Walmart and gave Ashley a silver chain with a heart-shaped pendant for her birthday. He said everything seemed fine when he visited the trailer afterward. He left around 9:30 p.m., though one of Danny's relatives would later claim Jeremy left closer to 10:30. Plans were in place for the following morning. Kathy was going to take Ashley to her driver's license exam, and Lauria had a dental appointment scheduled. Nothing about that night indicated what was about to unfold. No outgoing phone calls were made from the Freeman home, and no signs of distress were noted. But in the early morning hours of December 31st, something horrific happened inside that trailer. At around 6 a.m., a passerby spotted flames rising from the Freeman property and called 911. By the time first responders arrived, the trailer was engulfed. Firefighters doused the blaze, and when the smoke cleared, they discovered the charred remains of Kathy Freeman in what was left of the living room. At first, police said they were confident there were no other bodies inside. They didn't secure the scene overnight. It wasn't until the following day, when Jay and Lorene Bible returned to look for clues themselves, that Danny Freeman's body was found. He had been partially covered by debris in the master bedroom. Both he and Kathy had been shot to death before the fire started. Kathy was likely killed around 5 a.m., just an hour before the fire was reported. Danny's collarbone had been fractured before he was fatally shot. Lauria Bible's car was still parked outside. The keys were in the ignition. Her purse was inside the trailer, untouched. And yet, both girls were gone. Ashley and Lauria had vanished into the cold Oklahoma morning, leaving behind only questions and a scene of carnage that would haunt two families forever. Absolutely. Here's the continuation of the story from where we left off, long form, vivid, and detailed, just like you asked. When the fire was first extinguished, investigators from the Craig County Sheriff's Office quickly concluded that Kathy Freeman had died in the blaze. There was little reason, they thought, to believe otherwise. But this was a fatal mistake, one that would forever haunt the investigation. The Freeman's trailer was not secured. No yellow crime scene tape, no overnight patrols. Officers treated it more like an accidental fire than a potential double homicide and kidnapping. For 24 crucial hours, the crime scene sat unguarded, open to the elements, and to anyone who might wish to tamper with it. Jay and Lorene Bible, Lauria's parents, couldn't sleep. Their daughter wasn't answering her phone, and with Ashley also missing, they feared the worst. Early on January 1st, the day after the fire, Jay drove back out to the Freeman property on his own. The sheriff's department had not yet found Danny Freeman's body, nor had they provided any substantial updates. Jay stepped into the burnt wreckage, taking in the scent of scorched wood and plastic, and something darker underneath. As he walked through the ruins of the master bedroom, he spotted something protruding from a pile of debris. It was the second body. Danny Freeman had been there the whole time. Overlooked. Ignored. His corpse was partially covered by what used to be the ceiling. Jay ran out of the trailer and called the authorities. When police returned, they confirmed the unthinkable. Both Kathy and Danny Freeman had been shot execution style, and someone had deliberately set the trailer on fire to cover it up. But the girls were still missing. Not a trace of Ashley. Not a clue about Lauria. No blood. No drag marks. No footprints in the ash. It was as if they had evaporated into thin air. Immediately, suspicion turned to the most obvious theory, that Danny Freeman's growing feud with the Craig County Sheriff's Department had finally boiled over. Some believed law enforcement might have been involved in his murder, perhaps in retaliation for his threats of a civil lawsuit over Shane's death. After all, Shane had been killed by one of their own just 11 months earlier. The Freemans had made enemies in town, Danny especially, but others weren't convinced. Danny had his demons, yes. He was known to be violent and paranoid. There were rumors of domestic abuse and past run-ins with neighbors. But was that enough to justify murder and the disappearance of 2 teenage girls? Some believed it was a targeted hit, that someone had come to kill the Freemans, and the girls were either witnesses or collateral damage. Maybe the girls had fled in fear. Maybe they were taken. But taken by who? Danny Freeman was reportedly dealing small amounts of marijuana, and law enforcement had long suspected him of growing weed on his property. Was it possible he'd gotten tangled up with the wrong people? Someone who wanted payback? Someone dangerous? Then there was another possibility, darker still. Was it possible Danny had killed his wife, kidnapped the girls, and then taken his own life in the fire? At first, that idea was entertained, but it didn't fit. Danny's body had a fractured collarbone, indicating a struggle, and the placement of both bodies made it clear that someone else had orchestrated the crime. This wasn't a murder-suicide. This was something else entirely. Tips poured in from across the region. Witnesses claimed to have seen the girls in nearby towns, in Kansas, Missouri, even as far as Arkansas. None of the leads panned out. One of the most promising leads came from a former informant named Jeremy Jones, a self-described drifter and meth addict with a long criminal history. In 2005, Jones, who was awaiting trial for a murder in Alabama, claimed he had killed Ashley and Lauria after the fire. He told investigators he knew the Freemans through the drug scene, and that Danny had owed money to the wrong people. Jones said he went to the Freeman trailer to collect on a drug debt. When things got out of hand, he claimed he shot the Freemans, took the girls, and killed them later near a mining pit in Kansas. It was a compelling confession. Authorities scoured the area Jones mentioned. They brought cadaver dogs, searched with heavy equipment, drained ponds. Nothing. No bones. No clothing. No trace of the girls. Eventually, Jones recanted his confession. He admitted he had made it up for attention, or in hopes of a lighter sentence. Whatever his motives, he wasn't telling the truth, at least not all of it. Investigators were back to square one. While law enforcement seemed to falter at every turn, Jay and Lauria Bible pressed forward. They distributed flyers across the country. They chased every lead, no matter how small. They made appearances on television, America's Most Wanted, Unsolved Mysteries, The Montel Williams Show. They refused to let the world forget their daughter or her best friend. Lauria kept Lauria's room exactly as it had been on the night she disappeared, the clothes folded neatly, the perfume still sitting on the dresser. Every holiday, she set out 2 extra plates at the table, 1 for each girl. They never gave up hope, but as the years passed, that hope grew more fragile. In 2017, nearly 18 years after the girls vanished, a break finally came. A man named Ronnie Busick was arrested in April 2018, charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and kidnapping. 2 other suspects, Warren Phil Welch II and David Pennington, were identified posthumously. Both had died in the years prior. All 3 men were known meth dealers in northeastern Oklahoma. They were violent, dangerous, and connected to the Freemans. According to newly uncovered witness statements, Welch, Pennington, and Busick had gone to the Freeman trailer on December 30th, 1999, looking to settle a drug-related dispute with Danny. When the confrontation escalated, they killed both Danny and Kathy, then set fire to the trailer. But what happened to the girls? That answer was even more disturbing. Witnesses, many of them former girlfriends and drug associates, claimed that Ashley and Lauria had been taken to Welch's mobile home, held captive for several days, possibly up to 2 weeks. During that time, they were tortured, assaulted, and ultimately murdered. Their bodies were never recovered. Welch, according to one witness, bragged about keeping Polaroid photos of the girls bound and gagged in a briefcase. When Welch died in 2007, the photos were never found. Busick denied involvement at first, then admitted he knew what had happened, but wasn't the one who pulled the trigger. He eventually accepted a plea deal in 2020 and was sentenced to 15 years, with only 10 years of prison time. Many viewed the sentence as a slap in the face, especially Jay and Laureen Bible, because even with the arrests and even with partial confessions, one question still hangs in the air like smoke from a fire long since extinguished. Where are Ashley Freeman and Lauria Bible? As of April 2025, 25 years later, their remains have never been found. It was January 19, 2005, when 27-year-old Donovan Nmo was last seen alive in Blaine County, Oklahoma. To the people who knew him best, Donovan was no stranger to rough patches in life. He'd battled addiction, cycled in and out of prison, and wrestled with the kind of inner demons that often come from hard upbringing and bad breaks. But despite all that, he was still someone's son. He had family and friends who cared, people who noticed when he vanished without a trace. The next day, a Blaine County Sheriff's deputy came across something odd. Parked on a dirt road southeast of Watonga, Oklahoma, sat an abandoned light blue 1995 Buick Century. The car belonged to Donovan. It had been left in an isolated area, far from major roads and not near any home. The keys were gone. There was no sign of a struggle at the scene, but also no sign of Donovan. No wallet, no phone, no clue where he could have gone. And for 2 weeks, nothing happened. No calls, no sightings, just silence. Then, on February 3rd, Donovan's mother officially reported him missing. That same month, investigators ran the plates on the abandoned Buick and confirmed what they feared. The car wasn't just abandoned. It was part of a bigger mystery, one that was only beginning to unravel. But the breakthrough didn't come from evidence. It came from a confession. In March 2005, about 6 weeks after Donovan vanished, a woman named Jennifer Marie Durbin found herself in police custody. She'd been picked up on a weapons violation, a pretty standard arrest in a rural area. But what she told investigators next blew the case wide open. Durbin claimed that Donovan wasn't missing. He was dead, and she knew because she helped kill him. Durbin, then in her 20s, told police she and Donovan had been friends. They'd hung out, used drugs together, methamphetamine mostly, and occasionally crashed at each other's places. On the day Donovan disappeared, she said she'd invited him to her trailer under false pretenses. She didn't say what the excuse was, only that Donovan had trusted her enough to come over. But waiting inside that trailer was Durbin's boyfriend, David Wainwood Jr. The two men had never met face-to-face before, but Donovan had heard of him. In fact, Wood had threatened Donovan over the phone previously, and those threats had left a lasting impression. According to Durbin, if Donovan had known Wood was inside the trailer that day, he would have never shown up. He was scared of him, and for good reason. Once Donovan walked inside, the trap was sprung. Durbin said Wood ambushed him, shocking him repeatedly with a stun gun before viciously beating him in the living room of the trailer. While Wood attacked, Durbin stood watch, making sure no one came by or heard the commotion. They bound Donovan's wrists and ankles with an extension cord, then stuffed his battered body into the trunk of his own car. From there, the nightmare only grew darker. Wood took the wheel of Donovan's Buick while Durbin followed in her own vehicle. The plan, according to her statement, was simple: get rid of Donovan. Permanently. They drove the rural backroads of northwestern Oklahoma, searching for a secluded place to dump the body. But the car ran out of gas. So they transferred Donovan, still alive, into Durbin's vehicle. They kept driving, and Donovan kept fighting. At one point, they had to stop and beat him again just to keep him quiet. There was no mercy in Durbin's confession, just cold, brutal details. Eventually, She said they reached a bridge that stretched across a body of water. Durbin didn't specify the location, but she said that's where it would open the car door, drag Donovan out, and threw him into the water below. That was the last time anyone saw Donovan Nmo alive. When investigators searched Durbin's trailer, they found compelling physical evidence that backed up her story. Bloodstains belonging to Donovan were found on the carpet pad, and a towel. In what seemed like a panicked cleanup attempt, parts of the carpet had been bleached and burned. But enough traces remained to tell the story. A violent struggle had taken place, and Donovan had been there, just as Durbin claimed. But even with the confession and supporting evidence, no one was charged. Yet. The wheels of justice moved slowly in rural Oklahoma, especially in a case built on the word of a meth addict with a criminal past. Then came a second bombshell. In July 2008, 3 years after Durbin's confession, investigators obtained another statement, this time from a friend of David Wood. The friend claimed Wood had confessed everything, that he and Durbin had beaten Donovan to death, wrapped him in a piece of carpet, and disposed of his body. That testimony, coupled with the earlier confession and physical evidence, was finally enough. That same month, both Jennifer Durbin and David Wayne Wood Jr. were formally charged with first-degree murder. Durbin pleaded guilty in April 2010, and Wood followed suit that July. Neither showed remorse. Neither expressed sorrow for the brutal death they inflicted. The court showed no mercy. Both were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The strange twist in all of this is that even with 2 murder convictions and detailed confessions, Donovan's body has never been found. Multiple search efforts have been conducted, drones, sonar, and divers combing through bodies of water throughout northwest Oklahoma, but nothing has turned up. No bones, no clothing, no signs of a body ever being there. The exact bridge where Wood allegedly disposed of Donovan remains unidentified, and with the vast open land and rural water systems in the area, pinpointing the location has proven nearly impossible. And so Donovan Nmo remains classified as a missing person. Technically, he's presumed dead, and his killers are behind bars, but his mother still has no grave to visit, no place to say goodbye. All she has are stories and court documents and the memory of a son who never came home. What makes this case especially haunting isn't just the murder itself. It's the layers of dysfunction and violence that surrounded everyone involved. Drugs, paranoia, control, and rage, all of it simmering in the dark corners of Oklahoma's backroads. By all accounts, Donovan was no saint. He had his run-ins with the law, struggled with meth addiction, and was known to be volatile. But he didn't deserve what happened to him. No one does. He walked into that trailer that day, believing he was meeting a friend. Instead, he stepped into a trap that would end his life. To this day, both Oklahoma and Colorado authorities remain open to any new information that could lead to Donovan's remains. And every so often, rumors still circulate about where his body might be, or whether someone out there knows more than they've said. If you have any information, no matter how small, you're urged to contact the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. On the warm fall afternoon of September 26, 1981, the Oklahoma State Fairgrounds in Oklahoma City were buzzing with laughter, flashing lights, and the smell of fried food. The fair was in full swing, rides roaring, music blaring, and families milling about with stuffed animals and cotton candy in hand. 4 13-year-olds Cinda, Pallet, and Charlotte Kinsey. This was meant to be a carefree day at the fairgrounds. A day of fun, rides, and perhaps a taste of independence. But instead, that day would mark the beginning of a haunting mystery that remains unsolved over 4 decades later. Cinda and Charlotte were last seen alive that afternoon. Both girls had attended the fair together, like thousands of other local teenagers hoping to enjoy the final weekend of the state fair. At some point, Charlotte made a call to her family's home. She excitedly explained that she and Cinda had been offered a short-term job, helping a man unload large plush toys from a truck. The man claimed to be working with the carnival and offered the girls $5 an hour, a tempting offer for 2 young teens with wide eyes and bigger dreams. Charlotte's mother agreed to the job under one condition. Her daughter had to call home again by 9 p.m. to check in. That call never came. The girls never returned home, and they never even made it to Cinda's house, where they had planned to sleep over that night. Instead, Cinda and Charlotte vanished into thin air. According to witnesses at the fair, a man fitting a very distinct description had been seen speaking to Cinda and Charlotte that day. He was described as being between 35 to 50 years old, 6 feet 1 inch to 6 feet 3 inches tall, and 200 to 250 pounds. He had dark hair, a full dark beard with gray streaks, and a thick mustache. He wore silver wire-rimmed eyeglasses, a straw cowboy hat, a striped or plaid cowboy-style shirt, cowboy boots, and a digital watch on his left wrist. Most unusually, he had a leather belt tooled with the name Joseph and wore a yellow badge that identified him as a carnival worker. This man had been talking to several children at the fair that day, offering them jobs for $5 an hour to help unload carnival merchandise. He didn't just target girls. He also approached 2 teenage boys and invited them to help. The boys agreed and were taken, along with Cinda and Charlotte, to a nearby truck stop off Interstate 40. But when they arrived, the man told them the truck wasn't there yet. He gave the boys $10 and told them to wait while he went to get the truck. Then he drove off, with Cinda and Charlotte still in the back seat of his car. They were never seen again. The man drove a tan two-door 1980 or 1981 Pontiac Grand Prix with a half-vinyl roof and South Dakota license plates. That detail helped police narrow down their search. Shortly after the disappearances, the yellow badge the man had been wearing was recovered at the fairgrounds. It bore the name and photo of a carnival drifter named Don Corey, a man who bore a striking resemblance to the suspect. Corey was quickly located and arrested in Texas, and he was charged with 2 counts of kidnapping. But almost as quickly as the charges were filed, they were dropped. Corey had a rock-solid alibi. On the day of the girl's disappearance, he had been in Dallas. His time-stamped receipts and multiple eyewitnesses cleared him. Just like that, the case stalled. Authorities confirmed that none of the official fair employees matched the description of the man or had any known interaction with the girls. Investigators came to believe that the man had posed as a carnival worker in order to lure children into his trap. Years passed with few new leads, until 1985, when attention shifted to a man named Royal Russell Long. He was a long-haul truck driver and part-time carnival worker who had been in Oklahoma City at the time of the girl's disappearance. Not only did Long resemble the suspect in the sketches, he had arrived in the city the day before the fair and had visited the fairgrounds the day the girls went missing. Witnesses, including the 2 teenage boys, later identified Long as the man who offered them jobs. Even more disturbing was Long's criminal background. He had a long history of sexual violence against young women. His own daughter accused him of molestation, and she claimed she had seen him lure young girls with puppies or stuffed animals, a method that sounded chillingly familiar. When police tracked down the Pontiac Grand Prix that Long had rented during his stay in Oklahoma, forensic testing revealed crucial evidence. Hairs found in the trunk matched Cinda Pallet. There were also animal hairs that matched the breeds of Cinda's family pets. Even more disturbing, the mat in the trunk had a bloody boot print and bloodstains. An expert testified that the stains appeared to outline either one large body or 2 smaller bodies, though DNA testing wasn't advanced enough at the time to confirm their identities. A lock of blonde hair was also found in Long's residence in Wyoming. Investigators believed it could have belonged to Charlotte, but again, testing was inconclusive. In modern times, this evidence would likely be retested with advanced DNA technology. In August of 1985, Long was formally charged with kidnapping and murdering both girls. The case appeared strong, but all fell apart in court. The judge presiding over the case excluded major pieces of evidence, including the testimony of Long's daughter and one of the boys who had been lured to the truck stop. The forensic evidence was also thrown out. With no physical bodies, no confessions, and key testimony disallowed, the charges were ultimately dismissed. Before he died of a heart attack in 1993, Long continued to taunt the Pallet and Kinsey families, claiming he was the only one who knew what truly happened to their daughters. Authorities believe he was indeed the perpetrator, but without concrete evidence, they were never able to hold him fully accountable. Cinda was a spirited young girl with a love of sports. She played shortstop on her softball team and was eagerly anticipating basketball tryouts. She had even bought tickets to see Van Halen, one of her favorite bands, in concert the week after she vanished. Charlotte was equally full of life and excitement, and both girls had dreams far beyond that September evening at the fair. To this day, their bodies have never been found. Investigators believe they were likely killed and buried somewhere in Oklahoma, but the vastness of the state's rural areas and the passage of time have made that possibility increasingly remote. Despite all the years that have passed, the disappearance of Cinda Pallet and Charlotte Kinsey continues to haunt Oklahoma. The fairgrounds where they were last seen are still active. People still gather there for music, food, and fun. But for those who remember 1981, the fair will forever be marked by a dark and tragic mystery.